Okay, I've been plant-based for over 10 years, as most of you know. I've coached almost now 600 clients through this process, and I see, as you can imagine, the same mistakes time and time again. Most people are doing the right thing for ethics and their health, but their plan is simply not strategic for weight loss. It's not precise enough. I vowed that I'd not do another live stream again in 2025 because they don't actually seem that productive for the growth and the sustenance of this YouTube channel. But here we are. I really fancy doing one this morning. And this is what I want to discuss with you today. I want to start by sharing three main reasons that I observe time and time again as to why most plant-based weight loss attempts fail. We already know this is an incredible approach to nutrition, but an amazing nutrition base, sadly, isn't enough to always guarantee success on the scale. So three reasons that I see again, time and time again, as to why people struggle with this. Number one, they are far too extreme. I've talked about this extensively, but following something like a 100% whole foods diet. Don't get me wrong, I'm not an advocate for flexible dieting. Some people teach like 70 or 80%. Some people have the 80-20 rule, so 80% whole foods. Directionally, that's good. It's better than probably how most people in the Western world, sadly, nowadays eat. But I always feel 20% of your diet being made up of little treats and indulgences that you fit in. Is that really enough to heal? Is that really enough to improve your relationship with food? I say no. But simultaneously, I don't think the antidote to that is 100% whole foods, because that's not realistic either. So too extreme in the sense that they're 100% clean. And if you can do that, fair enough, that wouldn't be too extreme. But I think for most of us, that's not going to be practical in the real world for day-to-day life. Number two, therefore, the second reason why most plant-based diets are too extreme is therefore there's no flexibility because they are set on such strict criteria. It must be whole foods, avoid oil forever. I don't cook with oil at home, but eating out, that's going to be really tricky. Doing things on the fly to avoid oil, avoiding oil on some of your dried fruit when that might be your only option. That stuff can be very, very tricky. So there isn't enough flexibility, again, for this to work, I think, for most people's day-to-day lives. The third reason why I think some plant-based diets can be too extreme for weight loss, ironically, is because they cut out healthy fat. And I say ironically because fat is very low in calories. So you would think, well, that's a massive advantage for weight loss. Not necessarily. If it compromises hormonal health and satiety, fat can be really, really important. Having a little bit of fat in your diet can be really important for satiety. If it's crucial from a nutrient perspective as well. So that we're more broadening there into health, well-being, etc., etc. But these are all things in my mind that can get in the way of your consistency. The fat is so low. Are you as satiated? Are you getting everything you need hormonally? Is this just another potential reason to potentially, again, crash and burn? And that screwing, rather bluntly, with your consistency. So there's cutting out healthy fats or just cutting out other macronutrients. Like, people are so tribal, like, it's the carbs, it's the fat, don't forget about the protein. People are focused on, like, they are playing like it's a trade-off, all the macronutrients against one another, as though they have to give up one and their weight loss success hinges on that, which is absolutely laughable. It's simply not the case, but we'll come on to why that's not the case and what weight loss really is about very, very shortly. But yeah, they're cutting the fats, or they're maybe being really aggressive with the carbs. And they're like, no, it's carbs that are a problem, especially maybe some of the more processed carbohydrates that I actually still think are really weight loss friendly, that I feed my clients every day, that I feed myself every day, such as the healthier breads, pastas, cereals, etc., etc. And I've covered which of those are healthier versions than the more processed, junky, high-calorie, low-fiber versions in other videos, so I won't hash that out again here. So whether it's carbs, whether it's fat, we're always attacking these, right? The nutrition, the diet space, it's always sets the framing that it's a bit of a trade-off, and one of these has to be sacrificed. Simultaneously, you, of course, see lots of vegans and plant-based dieters that perhaps don't always pay, sorry to be so cliche with this, but they don't admittedly always pay that much attention to protein. So one of the macronutrients is off, and this can really mess with not only having a nice, well-balanced, diverse plant-based diet nutritionally, but also then satiety-wise. Are you getting all of the macronutrients you need to to feel truly satiated with your diet and give you reason to continue doing it. Again, this is another reason why people crash and burn. It is simply too extreme to cut one whole macronutrient out of your diet. That is nuts in my mind, but it's so commonplace in the diet world, even in the plant-based space. Or maybe they're terrified of sugar. This is another classic reason why plant-based diets fail. And you think, well, that's crazy, right? Like, fruit is obviously going to be a massive part of most people's plant-based diet. Surely it's one of the key whole plant food groups. One of the 6 plant food groups that I'm always talking about is our lovely, delicious, sweet, nutrient-packed fresh fruit. No, like, some people are terrified of the sugar in fruit, and they do legitimately believe, sadly, that if this is you, it's not to be too cheesy with this and remove all responsibility, but it's not your fault, because there is an awful lot of poor information about this. But they are thinking that fruit is somehow comparable to, Coca-Cola and, all the refined sugars in lots of junk foods and candies and sweet treats and so on. And that simply isn't the case. It's a far more nuanced discussion than that. But whatever it is, they're following a plant-based diet that is simply too extreme. It's not well balanced. Or maybe they're driving the calories down really, really low, which is another point we're going to speak on very, very shortly. Again, it's all too extreme. They are taking the typical weight loss paradigm of it has to be fast, it has to be a quick fix, something radical has to be shifted out of the diet so I can get results here and now. And they're still applying that to plant-based eating, which can be such a healthy, sustainable, nourishing way to live. But they're compromising it with their quick fix mentality and impatience that, again, if this is you, I don't only and solely blame you. You have to take responsibility for this, let's be honest. But there is a lot of programming in the mainstream diet, health, weight loss space that makes people these little quick fix gremlins, I call them. And so they're taking that same paradigm and they're applying it to this amazing balanced, nutritious approach with plant-based eating. And I'm like, no, why are you doing this? You're sitting on the golden ticket and you're messing it up, because you're still in the faddy hack mentality. And that has to absolutely go. Or maybe it's like the 2 pounds of raw veggies per day. We know the person to which I'm referring to that advises this in the plant-based community. I absolutely love their work. But suggesting that this is a prerequisite for weight loss is a massive, massive mistake. Because again, for some people, like, this is tricky because I don't want to suggest that the consumption of raw vegetables is in any way, or raw weight vegetables, I should say, raw or cooked, whatever. I don't have any strong tribal alliances on that whole debate. That's another debate that I think is perhaps overemphasized at times. But, I don't want to sound like I'm pushing back against folks that are advising that we eat lots of vegetables. I entirely agree. But for some people, that simply isn't going to be practical. So people are following plant-based diets that have an awful lot of potential, but they are simply too extreme to sustain, and therefore losing that very realistic 4 to 8 pounds per month can be hard. Because you have a good start and maybe a really fast start because your calories are driven so low because of some of these extreme tactics we've talked about. But do you have that staying power? Do you have that longevity to ensure that you're losing weight past the first couple of weeks and you're not having that crazy rebound? Because the diet causes this insane crash and burn because it is too restrictive. And we've seen this many times. People then, you see this on the internet documented very, very openly. People then blame plant-based diets for their own crazy diet rules that were simply a little bit too extreme. Whatever it is, whether it's attacking the carbs, cutting out all of the healthy fats, maybe not paying attention to protein, whether it's aiming for a little bit of an idealistic 100% whole foods approach and suggesting, therefore, that you've broken all the rules and the all or nothing mindset kicks in when you have something that's a little bit of processed, or you eat one meal out and so you may as well screw up your whole diet, sod it, I've messed up now, right? All of these extreme rules, whatever it is, lead to the same thing in my observation. This is impossible to make stick long term. You're sitting on the golden ticket, but all of these extreme rules that aren't really ideal, not only for health and well-being and longevity with this amazing lifestyle, but also they're just not practical. Never eating out again, never having any inbuilt flexibility into your plan so you can't enjoy occasionally a glass of wine or a baked good. I don't know if I personally ever wish to be so Puritan that is my criteria for success. I don't think that's practical. The second reason, so number one reason why most plant-based diets fail is they are too extreme to be sustainable. The second reason is they're simply too vague. Maybe they are sustainable, but they are rather vague. For example, just eat plants, which is the mantra we hear an awful lot in this community, but there's no structure, there's no precision, there's no portion guidance, there's no calorie awareness, nothing like that. This is very taboo in the plant-based space, rightly or wrongly. But I feel like the whole calorie discussion especially is totally and utterly swept under the rug. Nobody talks about this. I'm speaking hyperbolically. Some people rightly bring light on this, but not that many people talk about this. And I think an issue I have here, I alluded to this in the previous point, is I think there is a suggestion often in the plant-based community that just eating clean is enough to guarantee weight loss. And sometimes that can help you lose the first 5 or 10 pounds, especially if you're eating McDonald's before and then you transition to this very healthy way of eating. You're naturally going to have a drop in calories. And maybe initially you don't have to pay all that much attention to, portion control and calorie awareness and things like this. But you will quickly find, let me know in the comments below if you resonate, all of my clients will be in here like, yep. You'll quickly find you hit that wall, and there's only so far that clean eating can take you without that deeper layer of structure and precision and portion control and guidance with regards to things like calories, and we've already spoken about macronutrients, right? I find that some plant-based diets are simply too vague to be successful. Or maybe it's the 50-50 plate model, which is like, well, 50% of what? And then there's the argument about starchy versus non-starchy veggies, and then there's the argument about going back for seconds and a lack of clarity on that. Again, these things are slightly too broad. They're slightly too vague. There's slightly too much guesswork, I think, for these to be repeatable systems that allow for consistent weight loss on the scale week after week until you reach your ideal healthy body weight. They're kind of hit and hope strategies. At some point, in some moments, that kind of vaguity works. Like you get away with it. You'll lose a couple of pounds here and there just by cleaning up your diet or just eating plants, just going plant-based. Maybe you do have that initial breakthrough, as I say, but at some point, what most people find, sadly, and it's really annoying because they got away with it previously, so they never kind of expected they need to care. But sadly, they find, okay, actually, no, I am going to need to consider calories here, and I do need more precision. I've been so vehemently against counting my calories or, even considering calories because it's been so nice just kind of not having to worry about that stuff that, oh my goodness, this now feels like a massive hurdle. They make it more of a monster through the avoidance. So these are things that all need confronting. By the way, I'm not about to pitch calorie counting as the solution. We'll come on to how I philosophize that, think about calories and counting and tracking calories a little bit later in this stream. But that isn't actually my solution, but having some awareness that, calories still matter, and clean eating can absolutely lead to maintenance or even regain, even eating healthy whole plant foods if the calories are not appropriate to you personally. So most plant-based diets fail because, number one, they're too extreme, or number two, as we've just covered, they can be too vague. The third reason, maybe the most important, why most plant-based diets fail in my experience, is because they are not accompanied by any habit/identity work. You are still the same person that reverts to the same old patterns under stress, in moments of busyness. You are forcing behavior in a sense that is foreign to you. Right? You are forcing behavior you haven't yet trained, and that's fine. Like, you need to do that to acquire that behavior and to adopt, consistent healthy eating practices or exercise. We haven't talked about that yet, but same thing applies with that too. So when I say forced, there has to initially, that's your rite of passage. You do have to force things that are unnatural to you, but that is extremely hard at first when you're running on all of these old patterns, behavior patterns and habits and routines and, food, beliefs around food, exercise, health, your body, all those limiting beliefs and insecurities and doubts and fears that all of us have. We also have lots of empowering beliefs as well, and we also have lots of ambition. So those things can help you along the way too. But ultimately, things like the emotional eating and the cravings, these don't get fixed even with the best plant-based diet in the world. So let's say you address those first two reasons why plant-based diets fail that I've already covered here, And actually, your plant-based diet on paper is brilliant. It's simple, it's satisfying, and most importantly, it's sustainable and realistic for you and your lifestyle. And it isn't vague and it is precise. And you know, if you follow it, you get a nice, healthy, steady, controlled weight loss each week. Let's say it does check that box. But if you don't actually change with this process, you're still going to be a victim to that kind of perfect week, totally awful week, spiral sort of, let's say, yo-yo, you know, the cliched merry-go-round that people are on with this stuff, where they're either swinging radically between being perfectly on track or wildly off track, and we have to get you out of that. And yeah, one of the big levers you need to pull to ensure you do that is the important, the crucial, actually the critical, I would even say, mindset change, and particularly on things like habits and identity. Identity meaning the story that we have of ourselves, the standards we hold ourselves to, how we see ourselves, and really embracing and immersing ourselves in, no, I'm going to live like a fit and healthy person now. And even though that doesn't feel an ounce congruent with the current person that I am, because I've watched myself be a little gremlin with food for decades, I'm still going to commit to that identity of myself because I really want this to work. And I do genuinely want internal transformation and behavior change. Okay, like true transformation, it doesn't happen on the outside. Right? That is just how internal transformation manifests. I'm a massive believer of this. There are exceptions like steroids, which can make it a cheat code. But generally speaking, you have to do the inner work to get that amazing physical and health change. And so, yeah, I think this is, again, like the calories, this is something that doesn't really get talked about, I feel, an awful lot in the plant-based space for one reason or another. You are still the same person following the same old patterns, even with the best plant-based diet plan in the world. And you are, yeah, again, forcing behavior that's foreign to you. How do we change this then? You need to ultimately change. Number one is repetition, which comes with consistency. Number two is reframes, which is changing how you think in certain moments. That's very important. And number three, pushing through your quitting points. That's where the transformative moments happen, when you are, you know, it's 10 p.m. at night. I always give this example, and you've had a really stressful day and the Ben & Jerry's is calling your name and whatnot. And it'd be easy to not just have a spoon, but nail the whole, have a spoon with a bit of fruit. You know, that might be something that you can flexibly build into your diet, but nobody does this, do they? You know, if they're in a bad mood, they're slamming the Ben & Jerry's, and then, you know, oh, it's actually a Friday night, so you know what, I've got a party, I've got a dinner party tomorrow night. Maybe even tomorrow isn't really the best time to start my new diet. Let's kick it back to Monday. And then, of course, Monday comes around and they have a stressful argument with their boss. And, well, they're off track Monday too. And then, maybe Tuesday. But I'm kind of thinking I've got a bit of a busy week anyway this week. Is this really the best time to get to the gym and start? Like, I don't need to give example, go in circles with this. Like, we all personally resonate with this stuff, me included. But you need to change. And it's through repetition, number one. Number two, reframes, changing how you think. And number three, you need to push through those quitting points. So the Ben & Jerry's moments where you actually say no, this is what I meant to say earlier. This genuinely changes you, not in one isolated incident, but when you constantly get to the point that you'd usually give up and you don't give up and you go and do something else and you distract yourself with something more righteous than food. It's amazing. In quite a short space of time, as long as you're consistent with it, you do actually change, because you are literally breaking those old behavior patterns and those chains of behavior, and how your mind associates certain feelings with certain actions. You start breaking that. Coding's the wrong word, but associations is absolutely the appropriate word. You start breaking those triggers, breaking those associations, breaking those routines. That actually changes you. You are changing. This is the deep internal work that most of us require, all of us require, for massive health and weight loss success. So you need to also, alongside the perfect plant-based diet, have or I shouldn't say the perfect plant-based diet. Again, that sets the wrong precedent, but a realistic, sustainable plant-based diet that actually checks the boxes we've just talked about earlier, but also do that important transformative work on the side. Because then you get the plan, and then you get you are the right person. Those things come together, you win. If you have one or the other, it doesn't work, because you can be a really consistent, committed person with great focus, great reframes, and you do push through quitting points, and you genuinely nowadays don't have many cravings. But if your plant-based diet is too extreme, or it's not structured enough, or it isn't strategic and actually putting you in a calorie deficit, doesn't matter. They're not going to work. They're not going to gel. They're not going to fit together nicely enough. Same thing if you've got the perfect plant-based diet in the world that checks all those boxes, but you're an inconsistent person. You can't stay on track. You don't lift yourself up in negative moments. You don't say no to all the social or lots, not all of them. Most certainly, that's not realistic, but lots of the social invitations, and you are, you can be put under some peer pressure. Like, it's not going to work. You need both of these things to come together. So what is the fix? You've identified why you fail on a plant-based diet. Maybe that it's the plant-based diet is too extreme in the first place. Maybe it's not too extreme. It is sustainable for you, but it's a little bit too vague. And actually, you maybe need some awareness around the calories now. You need to be a little bit more careful with the portions, and just eating plant foods isn't enough. So it's too extreme, too vague, or it's the habit identity work stuff. You haven't actually changed. Your diet is pretty good, but you need to do that work too. Let's say you've identified, right? What is the fix for all of this stuff? Number one, you need a plan that is simple and satisfying and incorporates all three macronutrients in a balanced, not an equalized, but a balanced fashion. So you're having carbs, protein, and fat, because this is most beneficial for satiety, and also well-rounded nutrition, of course. Number two, high fiber. Fiber keeps you fuller for longer, so make sure you're really, really full. So I love things like white rice, don't get me wrong, and I don't think white rice is the devil or anything like that, white potatoes, but maybe you have some gut problems with cruciferous veg, maybe you're not eating that many beans right now, not having too much of the tofu for one reason or another. I think you're really missing out, because when you have these more fiber-rich, like a plant-based diet, you're not going to struggle with fiber anyway, mostly. But when you make sure there's that extra maybe 10 or 20 grams of fiber in your day-to-day diet, this can make a massive difference for making it more easy to stay in a sensible calorie deficit. So that's a little hack for you right now. So you need all three macronutrients, high fiber, and a small strategic calorie deficit. Not, I said we'd talk about this, not an aggressive one that leads to these crazy crashes and burns. So when I say small strategic calorie deficit, doesn't mean you have to track your calories. Either you do track your calories somewhat, or you have a plan that you know for certain puts you in a calorie deficit without having to track and measure everything out for yourself, like my clients do. So yeah, you either do it yourself or bring some awareness to calories, or you have a plan that automatically puts you in one, so you don't have to worry about it too much. That's exactly what I do for my clients on Summit Sustain. So the fix number one for your failures on plant-based eating, plant-based diets from a weight loss perspective is, number one, to reiterate, you need a plan that is simple and satisfying. That's really, really crucial. Number two, you need real world flexibility so you can handle the meals out, the travel, and the busy weeks without spiraling. Case in point is my last YouTube video where I talked about a little bit about how I did this, and actually I made a couple of mistakes with this on my trip to Germany, but rest assured I've got another video actually on this whole subject coming soon, so stay tuned for that. But you need real world flexibility to bend the rules without breaking them, without totally derailing you for those tricky moments. Most people are approaching this from a far too Puritan perspective, and they set out with really good intentions, like, oh, I'm going to eat really, really clean, but then of course, the first social engagement, it's like, well, I don't know what to do here. I don't know what is the best choice. Do I eat before? Do I eat after? Do I still eat there? What do I have there? And then inevitably, once they have eaten something that's off plan, and because they've made it so clear, the boundary is so clear that their on plan plant-based diet is really, really Puritan, it's very hard to stop your mindset from being like, well, I've messed this up now. I've really buggered this up. And you've got this crazy ideal that was never actually realistic around the clock anyway, 365 days of the year. And so you only enhance the feeling that you failed by having such an absurdly idealistic standard, such an ambitious standard anyway. And we all know how that can feed into that sort of all or nothing. Nothing paradigm. Well, I've buggered it up now. I've messed it up now. So you need, number two, that real world flexibility so you can, again, handle the meals out, the travel, the busy weeks without the spiraling. Number three, ideally, right? Cheeky plug coming here, but ideally, you need some kind of help, coaching, accountability, support to change your habits and identity to keep you stuck, You can do this work on your own. That's how I did it. Took ages, took way longer than if Ryan Adams was around, talking about himself in the third person. Ryan Adams and Vegan Slim and Sustain was around back there. But that's how I actually did it, full transparency. But ideally, you need some support, some coaching, some accountability, some emphasis on the habit, the identity shift to accompany this incredible approach to nutrition. You take those two things, as I said earlier on, you gel them together. That's your recipe for success. When you are the right person and you've got the right diet, you absolutely win. And there are a bunch of secondary factors like exercise, water, sleep, rest, hydration, yada, yada, environmental stuff. Absolutely. And lifestyle, other lifestyle variables, absolutely. But you get those two things, they're really at the heart of this. You fix those two things, it's really hard to keep messing up weight loss again. So ideally, coaching and accountability to fix those habits and identities that keep you stuck. So if you've been wondering, if you're listening to this, hopefully I've shed some light, some clarity on this. But if you're wondering, I'm going to open a window, guys. Excuse me, I'm probably looking really, really disheveled, but it's really hot here. We had a 32 degree day yesterday here in Central Europe, and I think we're headed the same way this morning. I can feel it already. So excuse my disheveled, rather unprofessional look here. But if you've been wondering why your plant-based diet hasn't delivered the results you want, hopefully this live stream shed some light on that. You know, this way of eating, it's an amazing nutritional base, but that doesn't guarantee your success. And I actually break this down further. Yes, we've covered some basics here. I actually break this down further in my new Vegan Slim and Sustain Insider Doc. I want to be very clear. This Insider Doc, because it was really wildly popular when I announced this on Instagram yesterday, so I've had to be very clear with people. This is not like a freebie how-to guide. This is actually instead a behind-the-scenes look. I've pulled back the curtain, a behind-the-scenes look at my exact philosophy and framework after coaching nearly 600 clients through this process now. So in that Insider Doc, I simply break down why most plant-based diet weight loss attempts fail. Number two, what actually makes results sustainable in further depth than what we've talked about today. And number three, how my program applies these principles and pulls the correct levers to fix those things. Look, transparently, you will get insights from this even if you never join Vegan Slim and Sustain. It will help direct your focus. Okay, I need to stop worrying about this. I need to start worrying about this. I'm ignoring this massive elephant in the room. Oh my goodness, I'm paying all of this attention to this minutia about weight loss. I can get over that. I really don't need to think about that. That doesn't seem that crucial. So yeah, even if you never join Vegan Slim and Sustain, having a look at this Insider Doc, it really is going to be useful. I strongly feel that. But ultimately, this is written for people who are serious about finally making this their last restart. And this is what I've been saying to a lot of clients recently. We've all been kind of laughing about it, because I say laughing about it, not in a snobbish fashion, because this is something we've all done, but it's so ludicrous that you can't help but laugh at it. But we are banning, this is my new campaign, we are banning the Monday restarts. From now on, any talk of Monday restart, I don't let my clients do this anyway, but if I hear anyone in my personal life talk about, I'm going to restart Monday, I'm like, no, like we are banning Monday restarts. They are done. So if you personally are serious about finally making this your last restart and building a nutrition approach, an exercise plan that actually sticks, because it's number one, the right plan in the first place, but number two, you've actually changed. Your identity has shifted to the extent that healthy living, being slim, being fit, it simply becomes who you are. If you're interested in all of that, check out the Vegan Slim and Sustain Insider Doc. You'll find the link to that somewhere down below. It will be uploaded to Google Drive, so you'll find the link to that below. Okay, thanks for your time. It's an odd time for me to do a live stream, but I know we'll rack up the views later on, so leave any questions in the comments down below. Take care. See you soon. See you in the next one.